Hello and welcome to our next episode of Sanctuary, this virtual tour of all these beautiful churches that we build to house our blessed Lord. Today we are once again in one of those locations that's a little different than what we've normally been filming at. Normally we're filming in these great ornate churches or different places of our Latin Rite, but today we're continuing another episode just a little bit differently. We're not so much focused on the building itself as the culture, the community that is built up. We are at St. George Maronite community here in San Antonio. This community has existed in the Archdiocese since 1925, and the location that we're filming in today was built in 1980. And we have with us Father Charles Khachan, who is the pastor here right now. And Father, the Maronite group is a little bit different than what our Latin Rite people that are normally viewing are encountering. So what does it mean? What is a Maronite?
So traditionally when you talk Catholic Church, you think only about the Roman Catholic Church. That's the way we grew up, that's the way we were taught. But in the Catholic Church, as we all know, there is the Catholic Church, the Roman Catholic Church, and the Eastern Catholic Churches. And anything that was east of Rome at the time was considered the Eastern Church, west of Rome, the Western Church. The Maronite is one of these Eastern Catholic churches, one of the 22 Eastern Catholic churches. We are called Maronite following the name of our founder saint, who is Saint Maron. We celebrate the feast day on February 9th. He was a monk. He lived in the open air. It was a way of life for monks. He lived in the open air in the mountains between the modern day Turkey and Syria.
Okay.
Tradition says that he died in year 410. We do not know a lot about him except for few things that we got from letters between him and St. John Chrysostom.
Okay.
The Maronite Church, after he died, it evolved. It was a movement. It evolved after him, and now the Maronite Church, it's one of the few Eastern Catholic churches that never had a split in it. We had been always in communion with Rome. Sometimes when we talk about the Eastern Catholic Church, we talk about Eastern Catholic and their sister church that is the Orthodox. For example, the Malchites you visited this morning and the Orthodox, they are sister churches, but the Catholic and the Orthodox. The Maronite Church is the Maronite Church. We're Maronite Catholic, we don't have any Maronite Orthodox. We have been in communion with Rome, like I said, from the beginning, and the headquarters currently is in Lebanon. The Patriarch, who is the head of the Maronite Church, is a cardinal, and actually he was one of the cardinals who were at the conclave to elect Pope Francis.
Cool.
Yeah.
So what are some of the differences if they came to one of y'all's services on a weekend? What are some of the easy differences to explain to people that they'll encounter?
So the first easy difference is the language.
Okay.
We do our liturgies in English, but we have certain parts, the entrance to the altar, the Trisagion or the Holy Are You, O God, that's something very specific to the Eastern churches. And the consecration, we do those in Syriac. And the very first thing we say is, I have entered your house, O Lord, I have worshipped before your throne. We say it in Syriac, the congregation answers in Syriac, and a couple other prayers in Syriac, we do that in Syriac. The order of the Mass, of the liturgy is almost similar. You will see some differences. With the pandemic, for example, now we do not have the sign of peace. But the sign of peace for us, it's something that we take from the altar. And the place for the sign of peace is right before the Eucharistic prayer.
Okay.
We do it before the Eucharistic prayer because we have to be at peace with yourself, with others, to be at peace with God, to be able to present your offering. And what happens is that the altar servers will receive the peace from the celebrant, who will receive in his turn. So what I do is I place my hands at the altar, I receive the peace from the altar, I transfer it to the concelebrants, the deacon, the altar servers. In turn, they will give it to the community, to the congregation. One of the other differences is communion. In the pandemic, we have been doing all the same, but communion for us, we usually give communion under both species. And we do not do it on the hand. We dip the host in the wine and we place it always on the tongue.
Okay.
That's one of the other different differences that we have.
That's pretty cool. About how large is the community here for the Maronite Church here in San Antonio?
Our parish is about 400 families.
Okay.
A very diverse parish. We have the founding families that came in the 1880s from Lebanon and the Middle East, mostly from Lebanon at that time. Some new Lebanese, Iraqi, Palestinian, Syrian, Jordanian immigrants from all over the Middle East. And we have some people from different backgrounds who join our parish and who worship with us every Sunday.
Well, that's very cool. Now, one of the things I think would be important for us to talk about, just because it was something recent, we all remember the explosion that happened in Lebanon recently.
Yes.
We all watched that and we were kind of hurt by watching and seeing it, but it impacted your community totally different. Because I would imagine many of them still have family and friends, and maybe even yourself have people that you were very close to that we were worried about.
Yeah.
And so how did all of that impact, and how did it affect your pastoral ministry here to some degree when that happened?
You know, it was a hard, a bad week, let me put it this way. It was a week that for a while we were trying to wrap our heads around it, and it was there is a concern for the community. Always as a priest I have a concern for my community, but there was also a concern for the people who are there. What can we do to help them? What can we do for them in times like this? You spoke about the explosion, but the effects of the explosion, the lives that were lost, the people that lost everything, the people that lost their lives or their homes. We had about 300,000 people who lost everything, their homes, who were homeless. So it affected it in a way that it brought more worry, more concern. But at the same time, let me say it here. At the same time, the reaction and the response of the people in San Antonio, in the Archdiocese, of the people in the community who probably don't have any blood ties to Lebanon. It helped us through that period of time. It helped us to figure things out and to be able to help each other here and to help each other back home.
Well, that is awesome. Now, here in a moment, I am going to go ahead and turn it over to Father Charles just to give us a tour of his church. Like I said at the beginning, this isn't one of those episodes we're going to be looking at lots of stained glass and theological meanings behind a stained glass and an altar rail and all that kind of stuff. This is an introduction for us to meet some of our brothers and sisters who maybe they worship a little bit differently than we do, but they're still a part of our faith. There are our brothers and sisters. And so, Father, at this time, I think we're going to go ahead and transition into the church and begin our tour today.
So here we are inside the church, and as I said in the beginning, we have a statue. We are disciples of St. Maron, or followers of St. Maron. That's where we got our name from. This is a statue of St. Maron, who is the founder of the Maronite Church. As I said, he lived on the mountains between modern day Syria and Turkey. And he lived in the open air. That was a lifestyle that developed around him. And that's what we take almost our spirituality. In the Maronite Church, we are considered to be a monastic. We have a monastic spirituality. Most of our churches in the beginning developed around monasteries. A monastery would be built, and then where the monks or the nuns or everybody lived, and the houses started developing around it. The area started developing around it. In the beginning, the monastery was, in fact, the parish church. The church of the monastery was the parish church. Another saint of the Maronite Church is St. Charbel, that some of us may be familiar with. So St. Charbel, he was also a monk, and he followed the lifestyle of St. Maron. He did not live in the open air, but he lived as a hermit almost 23 years of his life. He joined the convent, and he decided to live a solitary life. 23 years. There is a strict constitution for monastic life. St. Charbel died on Christmas Eve in 1889, and he had a stroke a few weeks before, and he died on 1889. He is one of the first Maronite saint to be proclaimed by the Church. He was beatified by Pope and canonized, in fact, by Pope St. Paul VI. And our parish, like we said, is St. George. St. George, who was known to be as a Roman soldier from Palestine who met Christ and he defended him. We always see St. George killing the dragon, and there is a woman to the side praying or standing there. The legend says, or the story says, that St. George was a Roman soldier, and in the area where he lived there was a dragon that would show up once a year, and they would have to sacrifice someone for him. It happened that they cast a lot, and it was the princess that had to be presented as an offering. And St. George came and defended the princess and the town and killed the dragon. Simply, it is a symbol of the faith of St. George, who is defending the church, represented with the princess, defending the church against all the powers of evil, or of the devil, or the temptations. That's where the story of St. George comes from. Yes. And I believe this picture is from 1925, from the original church building. We kept some of the things in the church. Okay, so here we are inside the church, and it's similar to any other Catholic church probably we walk in. Like we said in the beginning, there are few differences in our liturgy and the celebration of the liturgy, the way we do things, but it's the faith is the same, everything is the same. In the church, in our church, is something in all the Eastern churches, especially in the Maronite Church, you notice that we have two ambos or two podiums. On this one, the first one that is to the right of the crucifix, it is where the priest does all the prayers and we read the gospel. On the other side, this is where the epistle is reading, or any lectors do the job that they have to do, the readings that they are assigned to do. Like we said, also our language, we use the Syriac language for certain parts of the church, especially consecration. We have to say it in Syriac. This is very important. And we use Syriac as a dialect of Aramaic. Aramaic is the language that Jesus spoke. We use the same words that Jesus spoke in his life. To the right here, we have the old altar of the church. This altar was the altar for the original church that was built in 1925. We kept it. We decided to keep it when we built this church as a reminder for all of us of our tradition, of the work that our ancestors did to get us here where we are today. So if you notice also, we have the cross that is above the altar, the cross with the 3 bars, or that is the Maronite Cross. We call it the Maronite Cross. The significance of that cross is very simple. Some people describe it, or they say it looks like the cedar of Lebanon, but for us it represents the hierarchy of the church, the Pope, the clergy, and the laity, the Pope and the Patriarch and the bishops, the clergy and the laity. The original version of the cross, on the edges of the 3 bars, there were, it shows leaves, and what that cross signifies, it is the tree of life. And we get the life in that tree from the Trinity, the bars that present the Trinity, the Father, the Son, and the Spirit. It is from the cross, from the Trinity, that we get our life, and that's what basically that cross means for us. Okay, we also have here in the church the relics of the Maronite saints. First, the cedar tree that you see, this is a cedar tree made of the real cedar wood of Lebanon. And the relics we have the relic of St. Charbel. We just spoke about St. Charbel, who was a monk who lived 23 years in solitary life as a hermit. We have the relic of St. Rafka. St. Rafka died in 1914, and we celebrate her feast day on March 23rd. And St. Rafka was a nun, and she lived a life of suffering. She lost her sight, and she was crippled, and she became a saint. One story I always like to tell about St. Rafka, on the feast of Corpus Christi, she had the desire to go and receive communion, but they could not take her. She asked for God to give her the grace to do that, and she was able to crawl into the church, receive communion, and come back to her room. And the last relic we have here is the relic of Saint Naamtallah al-Hardini. We celebrate his feast day on December 14. Saint Naamtallah, in fact, was the teacher of Saint Charbel. He was his teacher before he became priest, and he also was canonized. Saint Rafqa and Saint Naamtallah were canonized by Saint Pope John Paul II.
So we are here in the sacristy with Father, and one of the things that is always interesting for me, I love vestments. It's one of my favorite things is looking at the different vestments, and every church is different. Even in the Roman Rite, in the Latin Rite, we still have, every church is different in regards to how ornate or how that their vestments look like. Mm-hmm. And y'all actually have a little bit different of a set of vestments that y'all would normally use. And you're telling me the first thing y'all would do besides that, you would put on an alb, and then the next thing would be
the amice. So we put on the alb first, then the amice, and we put it on the head all the way to the back. Let me show it this way, and we tie it from the back. Then after the amice, we put the stole that is different than the stole that you see in the Roman Church, and it's two pieces attached together, but it looks like a one piece. After the stole, there is the center that goes on the waist, and then there is the cape that is usually, it could be simple, it could be ornate. It's open from the front, and this one is pretty ornate, but it's usually ornate from the back. And the amice will sit here. It will look like an extension for the back of the vestment.
Yeah. And see, like in our Roman Rite, usually a cope is used in very small circumstances.
Yes.
Processions here or there, or usually one of the main places you may see your parish use a cope is on Palm Sunday, for instance. They'll have the cope whenever they're doing the blessing of the palms and the procession in. And in the rite, it actually says the priest takes off the cope, puts on the chasuble. A lot of priests nowadays also say, that's a lot of extra work, and they just use the chasuble throughout. But the cope is still something that's used normal vestments here.
Yes, that's what we use on a regular basis, even on daily masses. Mm-hmm. We use that. That's the vestment that we use. We ought to use that vestment. That's the only vestment where we use. Parenthesis, let me open the parenthesis. Growing up, and it was after Vatican II, but before the liturgical reform that we did in the Maronite Church, there were priests who were the chasuble. After we did the reform, and it was only for pontifical masses that we were the vestment we wear now. Now everybody wears the same. That's the same that has to be worn. Yeah.
Well, that is awesome. Well, I do want to welcome and thank everyone for tuning in for our episode today here at St. George Maronite here in town. As I emphasize in every one of our episodes, these are active parishes. So whenever you get to that place where you are feeling free to go out into the world, I invite you, come out, join them here at the church here. When are y'all services here at St. George?
So daily Mass we have Tuesday through Friday at 12 noon, Saturday at 5 p.m., Sunday at 8 a.m., 11 a.m., and on holidays at 7 p.m.
So please consider coming out. I would hope that these aren't the only times you encounter these churches that we visit in our videos when you push play. Come on out. Take a little bit of time and do a small pilgrimage on your own. I do want to thank you once again, as I said it earlier, for tuning in with us today. Normally we close with the Angelus prayer, but today, as we are here with our Maronite brothers, one of the things that I would like to do is invite Father to lead us in prayer. This is a small prayer from their tradition. And one of the things he talked about at the very beginning, there are small little prayers. There is a welcome as you're coming in, kind of welcoming and greeting the altar. And then you said there's a prayer that as we leave.
There is a prayer of goodbye to the altar or farewell to the altar. Mm-hmm. It's usually reserved to the priest, but we decided to have the entire congregation at our liturgy, the entire congregation to pray. So since we're standing in front of the altar, I would like to conclude with it. And here it says, I leave you in peace, O holy altar, and I hope to return to you in peace. May the offering I have received from you be for the forgiveness of my sins, that I may stand without shame or fear before the throne of Christ. I do not know if I shall be able to return to you again to offer another sacrifice. I leave you in peace. Amen.
Amen. Now, one last thing before we close. Many of you all do know that there is the fund that is going, the collections, to aid Lebanon after the explosion we talked about at the very beginning. And so if someone was wanting to make a donation still to that, or hadn't really thought about it, or forgot that this is still going on, how would they go about doing that?
So it is an ongoing project. They can send their check with the memo Aid to Lebanon to the church address, or we have a link online on the church website that they can do that through that as well.
And I know y'all have said it is very much appreciated.
Yes.
It has been humbling for the response we've had already.
It has been humbling, it has been overwhelming, it has been heartwarming.
And it's good to remember, these are our brothers and sisters still too. So once again, thank you, and tune in for our next episode. It will be another great time visiting another beautiful church here in our sanctuary series.